It all started with a "for sale" sign I didn't put up. The sun was just climbing over the hills, and I was sipping black coffee on my front porch, boots still dusty from yesterday's ride, when I spotted the bright red lettering planted in the grass near the lake. My lake. Or at least the private lake that sat at the southern edge of my ranch. The one I'd stocked, maintained, and personally restored from a muddy mess to a crystal-clear oasis. But there it was, private lakefront parcel, now available. Contact HOA for details. I blinked. Hard. The only available land here was the patch of rocky slope that belonged to Karen Greeley, president of the Silvergate Ranch Estates HOA. And trust me, she wasn't selling anything. Not really. She was plotting. You see, Karen and I never got along. She moved into the neighborhood 3 years ago after retiring from a real estate agency, and almost immediately she started trying to turn the community into her own personal suburban fiefdom. Only problem? My land, about 24 acres of ranch, livestock, and the lake, technically bordered the edge of Silvergate, but wasn't part of it. I was grandfathered in, no dues, no rules, no nonsense, and that infuriated her. She hated that my fence was made of reclaimed wood. She hated that my horses grazed too close to her picnic lot. She hated that my dog Tucker ran free and that my family had deep roots in this land, way before her cookie-cutter HOA ever existed. But this? Putting my lake for sale? This was next-level crazy. I marched straight down to the sign and ripped it out of the ground. Not 5 minutes later, I got a knock on the door. It was her, crisp blouse, clipboard in hand, and sunglasses that cost more than my truck. "You vandalized HOA property," she snapped. "No," I replied calmly. "I removed a fraudulent sign from my land." She held up the clipboard like it was a sword. "The board has deemed that parcel part of the shared lakefront." I laughed. "You deemed? You don't own it, Karen. I do. This lake's been in my family for 50 years. She smiled, that thin, smug smile I'd come to hate. "Boundaries can be redrawn, especially when common use is involved. You mean the 2 times your HOA brats trespassed and tried to fish without permission? Public use creates precedent," she said like a villain in a legal drama. I stared at her. "You think you're gonna sell part of my lake?" "We already listed it," she replied. "You'll be receiving a letter." And she walked off, heels clicking, back straight, like she hadn't just committed fraud in broad daylight. I stood there in disbelief. But not for long. I knew what she was doing. Karen couldn't control my land, so she was trying to create a narrative. If she could convince some poor sucker to buy into the illusion, it would drag me into legal hell. And I'll admit, for a second, it worked. I was angry. Real angry. Until I realized something. Karen had made one giant mistake. She forgot who she was messing with. Because I wasn't just some stubborn rancher. I was a land surveyor for 15 years. I know property lines like the back of my hand. And even better, I had the original plats, the deeds, the title reports, every inch of documentation proving that lake was mine. And right next to that lake was her lot's only access road. And guess who had recently defaulted on the easement renewal? That's right. Karen. See, 5 years ago, before she bought her place, her lot had an easement agreement with my grandfather. A right-of-way passage across a gravel road that led directly through a sliver of our property to her back gate. It expired last year. I had sent reminders. She never renewed it. Probably thought she didn't have to, until now. So I pulled up the documents, double-checked everything, then drove straight to the county clerk's office and filed a termination of easement, effective immediately. By the time I got back to the ranch, Karen's real estate flyer had hit mailboxes. I grabbed a copy, shook my head, and smiled. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to be landlocked. That weekend, it got worse. She brought 2 cops to my property. It was midday Saturday, hot enough to fry an egg on the hood of a truck, and I was brushing down my horse when the sirens came blipping down the hill. I walked out, calm as ever, and there she was, arms folded, sunglasses on, standing behind two very confused-looking deputies. "He's threatening to destroy HOA signage and blocking shared property," she said dramatically, like she was auditioning for Dateline. One of the officers looked at me. "Sir, we got a call about a dispute. Can we talk for a moment?" "Of course," I said. "Would you like water? Shade?" They both chuckled. Karen scowled. I walked them over to the picnic table near the barn and handed them a manila folder. Every document, plat map, deed, and easement agreement they'd need to see. I even included a printed copy of the bogus listing she was trying to sell. 5 minutes later, the older deputy turned to her and said, "Ma'am, this is a civil issue, and from what I'm seeing here, you're the one in potential violation." She flushed crimson. "This is harassment. This is documented property," he replied, "and we're not going to arrest someone for removing a sign off their own land." She stormed off again, but not before warning me, "You'll regret this. The HOA isn't done." But neither was I. Because that same day, I made a phone call. There was a small empty lot right behind her house, one that had gone up for sale a month ago, overpriced, sitting stale on the market. I'd passed it a dozen times, and now I wanted it. I didn't waste time. By Sunday evening, the papers were signed. That little lot behind Karen's house, the one she had on, she tried to claim as a community garden, but abandoned after the weeds won, was now mine. I didn't do anything flashy at first. No construction, no fences. Just one small, tasteful sign planted dead center in the overgrown patch. "Private property, no access without permission." And right below that, in smaller letters, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." I didn't even need to name names. Karen knew exactly who it was for. By Monday morning, she was already pacing on her back porch, phone glued to her ear, throwing glances toward the sign like it had personally insulted her grandmother. She must have called every HOA lawyer in town, maybe even tried to contact the county assessor again. But none of that mattered now, because when I bought that lot, I didn't just buy dirt, I bought control. See, Karen's property was wedged into the far end of the neighborhood like an afterthought. Her only private access had once come through that abandoned back lot. The rest? Pure HOA land, governed by bylaws that even she had to follow, which meant no private driveway could be constructed without a vote from the board. And guess what? The new board, after the last drama involving fines and fraudulent signage, wasn't exactly on her side anymore. So now she had one way in, one way out, and I owned it. For the first few days, she tried to act like it wasn't a big deal. She started parking in the HOA's visitor lot and walked the long stretch through the back path, mumbling to herself every morning, side-eyeing my camera I had set up for security purposes, which, of course, was also perfectly legal. Then, one afternoon, she snapped. It was Thursday, bright daylight. I was tuning my ATV when I heard shouting. I turned the corner of my barn, and there she was, standing at the lot line, red-faced, practically foaming at the mouth. "You can't block my access. This is abuse." Stayed calm, just like always. "I'm not blocking anything. You're welcome to apply for a temporary access permit. It'll cost a few $100s and, of course, a signed liability waiver." "You're disgusting," she spat. "This is harassment." I pointed toward the sign. "That? That's property rights." That's when she did the unthinkable. She called the local news. I'm not even kidding. The next morning, a van rolled up with a reporter and cameraman. They marched to her porch, set up a little interview, and she started crying on cue. I watched from my porch with Tucker sitting at my feet, both of us chewing on something. Me, sunflower seeds. Him, a stick. I didn't interfere. I let her speak. The segment aired that night. HOA president claims neighbor's land war is targeted harassment. But they didn't expect what came next. Turns out the reporter, a young guy named Nolan, had a thing for the truth and curiosity, because after Karen's interview, he came back, alone, said he wanted my side. I welcomed him with lemonade, handed him the full binder of documents, showed him the fake lake listing, the expired easement, the police visit, all of it. He nodded the whole time. This is wild. The follow-up segment was titled, HOA President Exposed in Property Dispute Gone Wrong. My phone blew up. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years were texting me, "Dude, you're a legend. Karen's gonna pop a blood vessel. I owe you a drink." But the real win, Karen's house went up for sale that weekend. Quietly. No open house, no flyers, just a single online listing. And guess what? With the access issue now in full public view, no one wanted it. Buyers asked questions. The story was already online. Property value? Tanked. She tried to lower the price, then again, and again. It sat there, gathering digital dust. Meanwhile, I made upgrades, built a small wooden gate with a keypad, gave a few trusted neighbors the code, just in case. Installed motion sensor lights, painted a beautiful mural on the side of the lot's shed, a peaceful lake, golden sunrise, ice, and a lone cowboy sitting on the edge with the words, "Some land you buy, some land you earn." A few people even offered to commission similar murals. Apparently, HOA rebellion was trending. Karen tried one last Hail Mary. She filed a complaint with the zoning commission, claiming I was creating hostile living conditions. I showed up with receipts, witnesses, and a smile. The board dismissed her within 5 minutes. The commissioner even shook my hand afterward and said, "That lake mural? Beautiful touch." 3 months later, she was gone, moved to another state, sold her house at a loss. No goodbye, no apology. And the lot? Still mine. I didn't turn it into anything commercial. Didn't build a tower or a store. I turned it into a quiet community picnic spot. Invitation only. I even let the new HOA president host a barbecue there once a month. We put in benches, a little garden, even a fountain shaped like a trout. An inside joke. But the biggest feature, a small stone marker right by the path. Engraved in metal, it reads, "In memory of the time someone tried to sell what they didn't own." Sometimes people stop and ask what it means. I just smile. It's a long story.